When I first stumbled upon Lies of P on Xbox Game Pass, I had no idea what I was getting into. A Souls-like action RPG inspired by Pinocchio? I was immediately intrigued. What began as a curious download quickly became a full-blown obsession, and Lies of P is now easily one of my favorite games of all time. Its incredible world sent me down a rabbit hole of lore, and today I'm excited to share my deep dive into its hidden secrets and fascinating connections to the original tale. Before we go any further, I want to clarify something important. Lies of P is a completely standalone story, not a direct reflection of the Pinocchio book. While we'll be highlighting those specific connections, the game is also packed with references to other tales and historical figures. It's a whole nother rabbit hole, so if you'd like me to explore those other connections in a future video, leave a comment and let me know. Just a heads up, this video is going to be packed with spoilers. Seriously, if you haven't played Lies of P and you're planning to, please go play it first. It's an incredible experience that's best enjoyed blind. Once you're done, you can come back here and we'll talk about all the secrets. So with that warning out of the way, let's jump in. We'll follow the book's story from beginning to end and see how the game references everything along the way. In the book's opening, we're introduced to a man named Master Antonio, who grabs a piece of wood to fix a table leg. But when he tries to cut it, the wood begins to yell, begging him not to hurt it. Confused, Master Antonio, also known as Master Cherry for his bright red nose, searches for the source of the sound, only to be startled to find the voices coming from the piece of wood that he's holding. This character is the inspiration for the game's Lady Antonia. Soon after, Geppetto arrives at Master Antonio's home, looking for a piece of wood to create a marionette that will be like a real boy. Eager to get rid of the talking piece of wood, Master Antonio tries to give it to Geppetto, but it flies out of his hand and hits Geppetto in the leg. This causes a huge fight between the two, filled with name-calling. One of the insults hurled at Geppetto is Polendina, a name referring to the color of his corn-colored wig. They eventually make up, shake hands, and swear to be friends for life. Polendina is the name of Lady Antonio's puppet butler who tends to the counter. Furthermore, in the notes found in the DLC, Lady Antonia and Geppetto are revealed to be dear friends, and her notes are said to have the smell of cherries on them, a direct reference to Master Antonio's nickname, Master Cherry, for his red nose. After Geppetto finishes carving Pinocchio, he teaches him to walk, and Pinocchio promptly runs away. Geppetto tries to catch him, but the townspeople are too stunned to help. Finally, a soldier manages to catch him, by the nose, a nose of ridiculous proportions that seemed made to be held by carabineers. This line from the book is an incredible reference to the game's Golden Lie. If you've ever followed the right steps in Lies of P, you know that the nose growing out of the painting upstairs can eventually become the secret weapon called the Golden Lie. This directly ties the book's description of Pinocchio's exaggerated nose to one of the game's most memorable secrets. After Pinocchio escapes again, he finds his way back home, believing he's finally alone. But a talking cricket named Jiminy, who lives on the wall, tells him that he's been bad and warns him of a grim future if he does not obey his father, go to school, and learn a trade. An angry Pinocchio tells Jiminy that it's more fun to chase butterflies and climb trees. They argue further, and Pinocchio grabs a hammer and throws it at Jiminy, which kills him. This scene is referenced throughout Lies of P. In the game, a character named Jiminy reveals special butterflies for you to chase and hit for items. The fact that the cricket is killed in the book is a key detail, which we'll explore more in depth later. Pinocchio, feeling lonely but desperately hungry, falls asleep with his wet feet near a fire. He wakes up to a terrible surprise. His feet have burned off. When a furious Geppetto returns home, Pinocchio feels guilty and promises to be a good boy and go to school from now on. The next day, on his way to school, he gets distracted by some kids having fun in the distance and decides that he'll just go tomorrow. He finds himself at a puppet show where he's celebrated by 3 puppets, Harlequin, Rose, and Punchinello, who recognize him as their brother. They excitedly throw Pinocchio into the air, which infuriates the puppet master, who threatens them for ruining his show. The puppet Rose is referenced as Rosora in the DLC as a small puppet who escaped a cage, losing her shoes along the way. And this one I couldn't overlook, even if it's a bit of a theory, but the puppet master Lorenzini had a butler named Pulcinello, and I believe Pulcinello may be a nod to Punchinello from the book. This makes even more sense when you consider that Lorenzini is the mass manufacturer of puppets in the game. But the most significant reference here is Lorenzini's name itself. Lorenzini Venini pays homage to the book's creator Carlo Collodi, whose real name was Lorenzini, and the surname Venini comes from the actor who portrayed Pinocchio in the live-action film. After Pinocchio convinces Fire Eater, the puppet master, to pardon him, Fire Eater gives him 5 gold coins to take back to his impoverished father. On his way, he meets the fox and the cat, who feign ailments and convince him of a field of miracles where he can bury his coins to grow a gold coin tree. Excited by the prospect of doubling his money, he follows them to the Red Lobster Inn, where you also encounter the fox and the cat in the game. They abandon him there, leaving him with a bill of 1 gold piece. After paying it, Pinocchio wanders into the night, unable to see until he spots a glowing light in the distance. As he approaches the light on the tree, it warns him to turn back and go straight home to his father. The light is the ghost of Jiminy the Cricket, but Pinocchio, of course, has no interest in taking his advice and continues on his way to the Field of Miracles. This brings us to what is probably my favorite reference in the entire game, the Monad's Lamp. It holds Jiminy, who lights your way when you need it. This simple, common game mechanic is a perfect reference to Jiminy's ghost in the book, and shows just how much care the developers put into every detail of Lies of P. In the woods, Pinocchio runs into 2 masked assassins who oddly speak just like the fox and the cat. They attempt to stab him and take his coin, but he is made of hardwood. They hang him from a tree, vowing that they will be back later to get him. When Pinocchio is on the verge of death, the Blue Fairy sends a hawk to rescue him. She then brings in a panel of 3 doctors, a crow, an owl, and a talking cricket. The crow declares him dead, the owl insists he isn't dead but should be, and the cricket simply says that good doctors know to keep their mouths shut when they're uncertain. Pinocchio finally wakes up in a daze, and the fairy offers him some bitter medicine, which he stubbornly refuses to take. She warns him that he will die if he doesn't drink it, and when he still refuses, 4 ominous black rabbits enter, holding a small coffin. The largest of them tells Pinocchio they've come to take him to the land of the dead. This single scene in the book is packed with references to the game. First, the Blue Fairy is clearly the inspiration for Sophia, who guides Pinocchio and helps him grow stronger throughout the entire game. Second, the Owl Doctor appears in a shack as a mini-boss, and his dialogue directly references the book. He tells you that you're alive when you should be dead and that he needs to fix that. But perhaps the most exciting connection is the 4 black rabbits. They are a direct reference to the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. The first time you fight them, they bring a coffin with them, and in the second fight, the largest brother bursts out of that same coffin, bringing the scene from the book to life in a memorable boss encounter. Terrified of the rabbits, Pinocchio finally gives in and takes the bitter medicine. He immediately feels better, and the fairy asks him where his gold coins went. After he tells a series of lies, his nose grows so long that he can't escape. Amused by his predicament, the fairy takes pity on him and sends woodpeckers to peck his nose back down to its original size. She then offers him a place to stay, and a grateful Pinocchio agrees, but only if he can first go see his father. Now, this next one is a small detail, but one that I think is worth noting. At Eugenie Station in the hotel, there's a little woodpecker decoration pecking away at a piece of wood. I believe this is a subtle nod to the woodpeckers that peck Pinocchio's nose back into shape in the book. Again, it's a small detail, but I think it shows the incredible level of care the developers put into every corner of this world. Pinocchio leaves the fairy's home, only to once again run into the fox and the cat, who now looked bruised and battered. They lie about their injuries and insist that he follow them to the Field of Miracles. Pinocchio, ignoring every red flag, agrees. They arrive at the field in a strange place called Trap for the Blockheads. with many poor people and very few rich. Pinocchio plants his gold coin, and as the fox and cat leave, he starts to dream of all the riches he'll soon have. He fantasizes about a beautiful palace, 1,000 little wooden horses, and a library quite full of candies, tarts, plum cakes, macaroons, and biscuits with cream. He falls asleep, only to wake up and discover that the fox and the cat have already come and gone, taken his coin with them. To make matters worse, a parrot shows up to mock him for his foolishness. The game's gold coin tree is a literal interpretation of Pinocchio's foolish dream of a tree that grows money. The Jiminy arcade represents the childish and extravagant fantasy of how he planned to spend his fortune. And there's a fantastic secret in the DLC. If you use Alidoro's horn near the parrot tree in the zoo, the parrots fly away and a golden seed drops, which seems to plant a gold coin tree. It's a brilliant way to tie the mocking parrot from the book directly to this game. Pinocchio tries to report the fox and the cat, but in a strange twist of justice, the judge throws him in jail for being the one robbed. When the judge later orders all prisoners released for a celebration, Pinocchio is forgotten. He quickly lies to the guard, claiming he's a criminal, and is released on the spot. On his way to the Blue Fairy's home, a starving Pinocchio falls into a trap while trying to steal some grapes. The farmer who catches him accuses him of being a chicken thief. To prove his innocence, Pinocchio must take the place of the farmer's deceased guard dog, Melampo, and bark if he sees the thieves. That night, the same group of weasels that used to deal with Melampo approach Pinocchio and offer him a bribe. If he lets them steal some chickens, they'll give him one. Pinocchio agrees, then slams the door shut and starts barking, alerting the farmer. The farmer catches the weasels and threatens to sell them to the local pub. The character, the Atoned, is a clear allusion to the tragic guard dog Melampo, and the robber weasel mini-boss is not only named for the weasels in the book, but his dying dialogue solidifies the connection.
I don't want to die. I just wanted a full belly. That's not so wrong.
It perfectly captures the desperation of the weasels from the original story. Escaping the farmer, Pinocchio makes his way to the ferry and starts to clean up his act. He goes to school, does very well, and makes a lot of friends. Unfortunately, some of them are not the best influences, and they tell him a story about a great whale that can be seen from the nearby sea. Pinocchio, curious if this is the same whale that swallowed his father, follows. Once there, the boys reveal they've tricked him, and a huge brawl breaks out. A crab with a sludgy voice tries to get them to stop, but is ignored. When the boys run out of things to throw, one of them lobs a large arithmetic book at Pinocchio. It misses and hits a young boy named Eugene in the temple, causing him to faint. Distraught, Pinocchio pleads with him to wake up. The cops arrive and ask a fisherman to take care of Eugene. Pinocchio, however, tricks them into letting him grab his hat and runs away. The police dog, Alidoro, is sent after him. Pinocchio leads him into deep water, and when the dog struggles, Pinocchio feels sympathy and helps him out. Alidoro, grateful, calls off the chase and later saves Pinocchio from some hungry fishermen. So first, Alidoro is a prominent figure in Lies of P. While we later find out the one we meet is a fake, he is praised for saving many lives, including Jiminy, who is a clear reference to the boy Eugene from the book. In the DLC, we meet the real Alidoro, who goes by the name The Tracker. Finally making it back to the fairy's house, Pinocchio knocks on the door and is greeted by a snail from an upper window. The snail, confused about who he is, tells him the fairy is asleep and can't be disturbed. Pinocchio convinces the snail to come down, but since snails are never in a hurry, it takes a frustrating 9 hours to arrive at the door. Exhausted and fed up, Pinocchio makes his way to the fairy and promises once more to be a good boy and go to school so he can become real. But that promise is quickly broken when he's convinced by his friend Romeo, nicknamed Lampwick, to go to the land of the blockheads, a place where there is no school and boys can run wild. These characters and events are woven deep into the game's story. Romeo, of course, is a central figure, appearing as both the king of puppets and a friend of the stalker Leia in the DLC. Romeo's story is a tragedy in both versions. The most powerful proof of this is found on New Game Plus, where the unfiltered text reveals his final words. Maybe this is what real freedom feels like. Thanks, Carlo. The snail is also referenced in the DLC as Lumaccio, the leader of the bastards. Notes you find mention enemies calling him slow and slippery like a snail. He even talks about taking pointless detours in his own dialogue, a perfect callback to the snail's painfully slow journey to the door. A coachman's stagecoach, pulled by donkeys, takes Pinocchio and Romeo to the land of blockheads. For 5 months, they live a life of reckless freedom until they begin to turn into donkeys themselves. They are captured and sold off, with Pinocchio ending up with a circus conductor and Romeo with a peasant. Pinocchio's whipped and tortured, forced to become the star of the circus. He eventually learns waltzes and polkas, but during his first performance, he sees the fairy in the audience, trips, and breaks his leg. An enraged conductor sells him to a man who wants to use his skin for a drum. Pinocchio is then tied to a rock and thrown into the ocean, where the fish eat the donkey flesh off of him and reveal the puppet underneath. The Mad Donkey Boss is an obvious nod to the donkey disease that turns boys into donkeys, and while the person in the suit isn't a specific character from the book, the thematic link is unmistakable. But the most direct connection is found in the DLC. You enter a circus area where you can learn a dance emote. Performing this dance on a stage gets you rewarded with cheers and an item, perfectly mirroring Pinocchio's tragic career as a circus dancer. Pinocchio swims away and manages to find his father after being swallowed by the terrible whale. They manage to escape with the help of a tuna fish who swims them to shore. As they walk, they run into the cat and fox again. The cat, after faking blindness for so long, has now truly become blind, and the fox has a missing tail and is partially paralyzed. They beg for money once more, but Pinocchio refuses this time, telling them they deserve their fate and that stolen money never bears fruit. They find a house where they are greeted by Jiminy the cricket, who reminds Pinocchio of his past mistreatment, but allows them to stay. Jiminy tells Pinocchio that if he needs milk for his father, he must visit the farmer Giangio. Pinocchio sets off and asks for some milk. "That'll be a nickel," says Giangio, but Pinocchio has no money. They make a deal. If Pinocchio turns the water wheel, he can have some milk, since Giangio's donkey is no longer able to. Pinocchio agrees and goes to turn the wheel, only to realize that the donkey is his old friend Lampwick. Giangio laughs at Pinocchio's claim that he knew the donkey and sends him off with some fresh, warm milk. As you can imagine, Vanini's Pistrus submarine mimics the whale in the book. To travel to another location, you must hitch a ride in the belly of the Pistrus. If you read the descriptions on the fox and the cat's armor, you will find mentions of the blindness the cat endured and the love the fox had for him. I also find it interesting how Pinocchio quotes that stolen money never bears fruit. This quote, combined with the fact that the gold coin tree is located in the garden where Giangio resides, directly represents the hard work Pinocchio is now putting in, which I will discuss in the next part. Speaking of Giangio, Giangio in the game is another person posing as Giangio. If you're curious to know more, please check out Librarian's video, Lies of Paracelsus. Pinocchio learns to weave baskets and other items as he cares for his father. He becomes so skilled that he even weaves an elegant wheelchair for Geppetto, so he can enjoy fresh air. When he finally earns enough money to buy himself some new clothes, he heads to the market and runs into the snail. The snail tells him that the blue fairy has become terribly ill and is in the hospital with not enough money to buy bread. Distraught, Pinocchio gives the snail all the money he has. This time, the snail darts off with incredible speed, and Pinocchio returns home to weave 16 more baskets before falling asleep. He dreams of the blue fairy, who smiles at him and promises to reward him for his kindness. When he wakes, he finds he's no longer a puppet, but a real boy. His father is cured of his illness and points to the wooden puppet body he once inhabited, explaining that all this good fortune was his doing. This final act from the book is full of subtle references. The elegant wheelchair that Pinocchio leaves for his father is likely referenced in the game as Lady Antonia's handmade wheelchair. And finally, the most powerful link is a thematic one. The fact that Pinocchio's wooden puppet body remains after he becomes a real boy makes me think of the game's core concept of Ergo. Ergo is essentially the soul of a person that can be transferred to a puppet. It's a key resource for the alchemists, and their work, which revolves around this concept, uses the blue fairy as a central figure. It's a compelling reinterpretation of Pinocchio's humanity and soul being separated from his puppet body. Well, that wraps up our look at Pinocchio. There's a couple more references to cover. The Survivor, which has the mouse mask, I believe is a reference to the story of the lion and the mouse in Aesop's fables. The Survivor asks in a crazed state if you are Leo and speaks of being frightened and apologizing. In the fable, the mouse runs across the lion's face in a frightened scurry. The mouse begs for its life, promising to help the lion at a later time, which ultimately it does. The fisherman you meet in the shipwreck area is a tribute to the main character in Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man in the Sea. In the story, a fisherman named Santiago is considered salao, or very unlucky, because he hasn't caught a fish in 84 days. He's a mentor to a boy named Manolin, who is then forced to work on a luckier boat. But on the 84th day, Santiago finally hooks a giant marlin and battles it for 3 days. The sharks eventually find it and devour the fish, leaving only a skeleton. When Santiago curses himself for going out too far, he returns to the beach, where Manolin is waiting for him, crying at his friend's state and insisting on fishing with him again. In the game, the fisherman is named Salao, and his presence in the shipwreck area, haunted by a long struggle, perfectly mirrors the tragic tale of the old man in the sea. While the game is its own standalone story, the references from the Adventures of Pinocchio are very mindfully weaved into it. The fact that they added a reference to another book makes me even more excited and hopeful for the future Wizard of Oz installment teased after the end credits of the game. I'm curious to see what other books will be added as the developers work on the future add-ons. Maybe we will even see another entirely new game that's just as intricate from this amazing team. This was my first video, so please let me know what you thought of this. If there are any references that I may have missed, please let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate you for watching. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing if you've enjoyed the content. I look forward to doing more videos like this in the future.